Keep them in the air, please. It's green card. Everybody who has the green card. Do we have the count? Okay, so we have quorum. Thank you. So the first item on the afternoon's agenda is the financial report. So I'm going to give the floor to David Berman, icograda Treasurer.
Thank you, Eva. I'm so proud to be able to present to you a third consecutive strong financial statement. And I thought it was really poetic for me that Mervyn just got the President's Award, because it was Mervyn Kurlansky who invited me to be part of the icograda board 6 years ago when I first became treasurer. And at the time, we were just established in the office of Montreal. And I think back to how much has changed and how much has evolved and how much stronger we are today. You know, in the world of designers, there's never been more opportunity. We've never been more respected. There's never been more potential for us to do good. And I find that the financial sustainability, if you will, of icograda mirrors that. Because today, we have never been stronger. And there's never been more opportunity. And we've never been more respected, especially after the IDA Congress coming off so well. I think I see it's like a permanent shift forward. So since we last gathered in Beijing, we've gone through a term of time this past 2 years in the world economy, which is very, very tenuous. Global financial markets have been awkward. And yet I'm proud to report that during this period, icograda has come through very strongly. And we've successfully navigated the change going on in the world and made wise corrections with our business plan and made some tough and very clever, I think, financial decisions in order to make sure that we remain strong and that we're poised to take advantage of whatever comes forward for us in the time to come. In this period, we've seen some very large members leave us, and yet we cleverly diversified our membership revenue streams and added different categories. And the result is that even though we lost some members, we introduced our new fee structure in 2009. And the result is that the revenue from our proud new members who are pleased to be with us has entirely offset the impact of any resignations that occurred since Beijing. So that diversification and that enthusiasm from new blood has meant a lot to icograda. As well, our corporate partnerships remain a key revenue stream, and we're now in the third year of our most successful partnership relationship ever, which is with Adobe Corporation. And this type of partnerships, which we continue to pursue as our initiatives become more and more ambitious, is enabling icograda's capacity to deliver programming and expand our voice internationally. And of course, working with IDA, this is even more so multiplied. The 2011 the IDA Congress Event Agreement provides an even more stable revenue model for us because of the licensing that is part of that. And as well, we changed our model for design weeks, starting last year, because what happened was we live in a time where attendance at design conference globally is falling. And so it's been tougher for design weeks to make things work. So if current market conditions were adding uncertainty to our events, what we needed to do was modify the type of agreements we have to make sure that there are more guarantees in place, and so that any vulnerabilities we have are mitigated. So now we require financial guarantees in our agreements. We're striving to make our agreements clearer, and we simply have tighter criteria for our events, being financial, regarding sustainability, regarding making sure that we're always improving and building on the successes of our past so we can repeat those successes. Of course, we also continue to monitor our day-to-day expenses very carefully, and our secretary and staff team, and I think back what we had in 2005 compared to what we have today, it's evolved so well under such dedicated leadership, the kind of leadership that stays up all night if they need to make sure events like this come off fantastically. Now, on the flip side, in order to retain that expertise, we decided to improve the compensation plan for our team, and so that's reflected in the financial numbers we see that I'm presenting today. This included adding a full-time member of our staff at the Secretariat, which was tied to the Congress. And going forward, our staffing approach is that as we take on new projects, we say those projects must fund the soft costs of additional people in the Secretariat office in order to support them. So for instance, if a new project is going to require a quarter of a person here, we make sure that the money is in that project, the revenue is in that project to deliver that. So for instance, for the sustainability standard, which I'm super excited to be telling you details about later this afternoon, part of the plan is that it has to pay for itself. Now, as icograda continues to grow, the services we provide to our members, we have to ensure that each of those projects can sustain itself as well as be part of the larger group. And to reflect this as well in our bookkeeping, we've moved to a project-based financial reporting model where it makes it easier when you're looking at the income statement and the balance sheet to be able to isolate individual projects, both their revenue and their expenses, to tie them off. Because historically we had this challenge that if you look at our books year over year, for instance, if a Congress was part of that year, they would have way more revenue and way more expenses. And it was hard to tell was it a good year or a bad year. Or if we had a lot of design weeks, there'd be more revenue. And if we had a lot of design weeks, there'd be more expenses. So it's hard to look at the books and say, how are we doing? So by moving these items more into a project-based approach to accounting, it's easier to isolate the day-to-day activities from the projects that come and go and other ad hoc activities. Perhaps the biggest one that shows on the books is that because we're so involved with the Design and the Achievement Awards from Adobe, when we host the Achievement Awards at the Congress, as we did this year, the expenses are very different than when the awards are hosted by Adobe at Adobe Max in the non-Congress years. I'm pleased to report that accumulated surpluses from the past term were able to entirely offset the small deficit we showed in 2010, which was mostly caused by currency fluctuations. We've discovered that counterintuitively, a strong Canadian dollar can actually be hard on icograda because we're in Canada now, and it could be the next year that the Canadian dollar will be weak and we get a benefit. So this fluctuation goes up and down, and although it has little to do with our activities, it can affect our bottom line. And so we've set up our finances with separate accounts, potentially in other currencies, so that we can kind of hedge our own cash flow that way, and thus reduce the impact of currency fluctuations affecting what our bottom line looks like. As well, In 2011, working closer with IDA than ever, the IDA partners agreed to a new financial model for the Congress that retains an equal allocation to all three sisters for the General Assembly costs, while appropriately compensating ICSID for the project management costs that they conspicuously take on for certain events. Look, it's been a good year, and what was it David Grossman said in his letter? It's always it's a critical time for icograda, and it's always a critical time for icograda. And you know, there's always going to be fragility in our finances, and yet I think we've never been in a more powerful position. Part of that comes from the financial contributions made by every person at the front of this room. My fellow board members, my colleagues on the executive board, they each give generously, not just of their time, but of their money, of their personal expense that they take on, not just in lost revenue to their hours they cannot bill, and actually the hard costs of getting to events. And that's something that I think we really need to thank them for. Because that support enables... that support allows us to continue to focus the money we do have, the money that you provide to us, and the money we get from our sponsors, to focus it on realizing the most ambitious international agenda we've ever had. Now, of course, the same is true of every one of your member organizations. I know that every one of our organizations is staffed by people who are volunteers, passionate, who show leadership, and of course, without you, we are nothing. You are the lifeblood of this organization. And if together, if the future of civilization is our common design project, and we're the future of design, then it comes to terms that if as long as we continue to work together, that we build trust, that we build support, and that we look for every opportunity that we can lead creatively, then we'll continue to be what we are. So I have the financial numbers here in front of me, and I don't think I have sufficient time to walk through each item. However, in our book here, presented, I think, in the nicest General Assembly book we perhaps ever had, all of the financial reporting is here. The statement of operations is here on page 61. And the expenses and balance sheet are on page 62 and on. So I'm wondering if anyone has any questions on any particular items in the report. You could either ask them now, I don't know if time permits, or you can corner me anytime today or tomorrow, and I'll be happy to explain it in more detail. Is that So if there's no questions, what I'd like to do is I'd like to propose a motion to accept the financial report. And part of our financial report is that we have, of course, a chartered accountancy company which has examined the books and confirmed, they've done their review engagement of our books, and they've confirmed, and that confirmation is at the top of page 61, certifying that our books are indeed in good order. So I'm wondering if I can ask who would like to move this motion?
So we have Ali move, we have Gabby second. Can we please have a show of hands, all in favor? This is your green card, yes. Okay, thank you. Do we have any abstentions that we would like to record? Any against? Okay, so it's passed by the majority.
Thank you, David.
I have one other motion to recommend as well. The firm of Gosselin and Associates, which is our historical firm, the guy who actually does our books, who we love so much, has actually moved out and created his own firm that's dedicated to only doing work for nonprofit organizations like ourselves. And so the board decided that we wanted to follow this guy, and so we decided we would like to change our official, the chartered accountancy to this man's firm, and it's called APSV. So I'd like to ask for a motion to be put forward that we adopt APSV as the firm that will now do our review for the coming term and potentially for future ones as well. So I'd also like to ask someone to put forward this motion that I've put on the screen here. And it's at the same, by the way, he guaranteed it would be no more expensive than what they charged with the old firm. So it doesn't cost us any more.
She has a question.
But I was just wondering, because we're going to higher taxes, does it mean it costs us more than?
No, so this is a very good question, thank you. No, we can guarantee that the fee will be the same or less with the new organization, the DSE. Which was for instance, for the coming term, the price is $500 less than we paid for this one. So it's a whole financial sustainability. Thank you. Any other questions?
So, would like to move the motion? Michael?
Yes.
And do we have a second? Oh, okay, thank you. So can we please have a show of hands, all in favor? The green card. Okay, thank you. Do we have any abstentions? Anyone against? Okay, so this is passed by the majority, and I will just request.
Thank you, icograda family.
Okay, and I will just request that the minutes reflect that the term of appointment is ongoing unless otherwise requested. Now we're going to move on to articles of incorporation and bylaw revisions. This will be professional votes, so I will, when we come to the voting items, it will be your red/magenta card. So the first item is the icograda's incorporated name, so I'm giving the floor over to Russell Kennedy.
Okay, as I mentioned earlier in my report, we have a proposal to put to you, and I'm going to propose it as a motion, that we change icograda's name. Now this sounds significant, and it is. It's an important adjustment from our point of view. It's something that we've been discussing quite heavily over the period of this term, and for that matter, previous terms. But I think I'll go back to Jacques' term. Jacques?
Yeah.
What was that, 3 terms ago?
Yeah.
We actually agreed to change the description of our organisation to that of communication design. Previous to that, we used to refer to it as graphic design / communication design. So, what we've realised with the discussions at numerous workshops this term is that this change probably should have happened some time ago. But the fact is that we need to now readjust the description of what we do and the way we refer to ourselves. So we threw around a lot of names. We decided the name icograda had currency and had history and was definitely worth keeping. The discussion was if we changed the descriptor that would no longer mean that icograda would be an acronym. It would still be an abbreviation, but not an acronym, and it would just work as a word. So what we're proposing in this motion, as you see projected above, is that we keep the word icograda, and currently we call the name of our organisation the International Council of Graphic Design Associations, in abbreviation icograda. But as you know, we refer to it the other way around, icograda, the International Council of Graphic Design Associations. And we're proposing that we amend it to icograda, the International Council of Communication Design. It doesn't sound much, but it's a major shift for the organisation. So what we'd like you to do is consider this. We'd like you to actually discuss it. Obviously, you realise this is coming, and you've thought about it a lot, but it is a significant repositioning for us, and we believe that it is an adjustment that's long overdue. And as I mentioned earlier, it reflects how the organisation, or how the discipline or the profession has changed through convergence of media. We're no longer just working in the print area, which tends to be reflected in the word graphic, and visual communication or communication design is very much a multidisciplinary profession these days, and we need to reflect that. And we do. If you look at all of our events and our projects, they're all multidisciplinary. Okay, so I'll hand it over to Eva to run through the formalities of the motion.
Yes, before we proceed with the actual voting on this motion, can I just please have a show of scrutineers here and a show of hands of how many professional members we had in the room? So can I please have Zelda and Fatima here? And just everyone who has a red professional card, hold up your hand so we know how many we have. Also, if you have been given a proxy during the break by another professional member,
Would you please hold up your card? We need to do another card. Sorry.
Omar, you wanted to make a comment?
People don't know what font because it's not real abbreviation. It's not a real acronym.
Just for the sake of clarity, I would like to just reduce into the essentials, the reasons why we are proposing this change. The two major changes are moving from the wording graphic design to communication design, because we believe that graphic design, being a word coined many years ago, is not enough today to express, to define what we are doing. We are in a world of expanded media now, so we're also dealing with sound design, with interaction design, with many other forms that cannot be semantically included in the word graphic. So that's the first essential change. By the way, we've already done this in our World Communication Day. So April 27th is icograda World Day, International Day of Communication Design. So it's a process that we've already started in that sense. The other change is in taking out the word associations and just becoming the Council of Communication Design. We feel this is very important because our members are not only associations anymore. Many of them are schools, many of them are promotion entities, many of them are corporations now, many will be, we hope, cities also. So the word associations, which of course still is our core, is not inclusive of all the members we want, especially in considering how our area is expanded. So these are two main reasons why we want to make this change, and we hope that will agree across. Thank you.
Thank you, Omar. Is there somebody who would like to move this motion? Yes, well, procedurally, we would put the motion to the floor, move it, second it, and then a discussion would ensue. Okay,
I'm not making the motion, I'm not doing it.
there will be opportunity for that. Let's just see if we do have indeed a motion. Becca, would like to move? Okay, and can we have a second? Sanya? So, opening the floor to discussion. Pauline?
Yes,
We have a mic.
Basically, I have two things. The first thing, when you say icograda is becoming multidisciplinary, and I look at it as a multi-layered, as a multifaceted, rather than discipline. I don't see where's the disciplinary part in that, rather than the multi-layers or multifaceted or multi-aspect in which design is manifesting itself when it comes to this. And the second thing I want to say that I love the name. I mean, like International Council of Communication Design, the problem is a bit schizophrenic when it comes to icograda still, as an abbreviation, which is not an acronym anymore. So there's this kind of schizophrenia for me between what the title is and what the acronym reads. And personally, I'm having a bit of a problem with that. I would like things to be, I mean, we're designers after all, and teach that this should go like this, and just work with that, and this is how it is. I don't know, that's my point of view.
Hello? As I said when I stood up and said something, it's from our point, from the inner point of view, it's right to say we are the Council of Communication Design because we don't want to close doors. But as I said, we have to explain others what we are. And in this case, we are the Council of Graphic Design Associations because this is important to say, because they don't know why they should talk to us. These are always two sides that I want to say you should take in mind.
As communication designers, I think it's really important that we espouse the values of communication design, both verbally and visually. So the letters, I like the name, we are communication designers. Globally around the world, graphic design has been changed to visual communication in the university where I am teaching. I refer to myself as a visual communication designer. I do actually have a problem with the letters not marrying up with the name and having to explain to people why the letters don't actually mean something is a visual and communication design problem in itself. Thank you.
I'd like to respond to all three comments if I could. I think the point just made about the acronym, I think Harvey made that point as well. I think the thinking that we had was that no longer is an acronym, it's not really an abbreviation, that was the legal registration term. It is a name, it's just the name of the organisation, and it will be forever, and that was why we felt it important to keep icograda as the name. The descriptor after that, communication design, still encompasses graphic design. So we still recognise that term is used and it's still welcome within our organisation. Absolutely welcome. Remember, that's the history of the organisation. But we also encourage multimedia designers. We encourage game designers. We encourage illustrators, web designers, and it goes on. Sound designers, lighting designers. So It's you know, graphic design doesn't accurately describe what we do anymore, but we do still embrace it. You know, we do encourage it, and we do welcome graphic design participation. And I think, Harlan, what was your second point? The multi-layered, multidisciplinary. I guess there is a, you know, it's the definitions of whether it's multi-layered, multidisciplinary. I mean, you could argue that the web design is a discipline. You could argue that illustration is a discipline. So, you know, you could argue that it's still multidisciplinary. But I take your point that it's multi-layered as well, because we're talking to a broad audience now, and you know, we're about to engage with the network of cities, with the networks of schools. We're engaging in design thinking. You know, there are multiple layers, so I'll take your point on that. Do we have another comment from Andre?
Yeah, I'm wondering if it's not possible to add communication and keeping out graphic design, because so you can have not schizophrenia, because icograda still be there, and using co between for council and communication. That's the way to keep every motion in this one. No?
Well, I think we're in trouble if we start to think of it still as an acronym. We've only got.
Well, if you add communication before graphics, you have co and co, and that's it somewhere.
Oh, I see. So it still stays as a.
International Communication and Graphic Design Association.
Communication and Graphic Design Association. No, is that possible? Why not?
Why not?
It's a way to find a solution without schizophrenia.
Personally, I think it's adding to the schizophrenia.
You could even just remove the council, perhaps. Sounds so officious.
Say and graphic design, because graphic design sits within communication design, so I think we've done it before we go down that path.
I would like to say a few words about description communication design. Does it mean that, for example, designers of mobile communication devices like phones and so also fit to this description or not? Because I mean that we're talking mostly about visual communication design. And does it, I mean that, for example, mobile communication, this phone, at least mobile phones, also it's part of communication design.
Well, I think we're talking about, if you're talking about mobile phones, you're talking about graphic user interface, and that's absolutely what we're talking about. And we're talking about apps, and we're talking about a different world that we knew when we were studying design, and it will be a much different world when our grandchildren are studying design, and we need to come up with a term that acknowledges that. So yeah, it does include telephones and so on, and new media.
I just wanted to bring to evidence an example that I'm familiar with regards to the Italian Graphic Design Association, which is AIAP, A-I-A-P, which no one remembers what that stood for many, many years ago. Today they are the Associazione Italiana dei Progettisti della Comunicazione Visiva. They felt that that was necessary to update an old descriptor definition, and today really no one remembers what that AIAP stood for. They're just AIAP. It just is the sound of the name. Just to bring an example similar to what an analogy to what we're doing.
Are there any other comments or questions?
May I comment?
Yes?
I'm also a bit ambivalent about this because I agree that while we're moving from graphic design to communication design, when I look around the room and I see how many of our members have the word graphic still in their names, perhaps this type of solution where we say international Communications / Graphic Design Association would be get an interim solution. And we can be icograda and spell something maybe for a couple more years. And then perhaps we're on the verge of a much more significant shift in our branding when the IDA dream really comes together. And maybe we'll even consider the icograda part has outlived itself at that point. But in the transition, we could have communication and graphics still there. We'd have an acronym that would still read, and perhaps we could take advantage of all the diversity in the room.
I know that you do look around the room, you do see graphic design, but they're calling that for the same reasons we're still calling it. And our slogan is leading creatively, and our role as a peak body internationally is to set some direction. So that's why we propose this, and we agreed to it as a motion in our board.
I'd just like to confirm that during Jack Lama's term at the GA in Cuba, in Havana, I think there were several white papers that were delivered to redefine the discipline. And can I just confirm with Jack Lama?
Sorry?
Yes.
Can you just repeat? I was just
when you were the president during your term, and when you chaired the GA in Havana, in Cuba, you delivered several white papers, remember?
Yes.
And one of them is to redefine our discipline.
Yes.
And how did you redefine the graphic design? What was the outcome of that particular white paper?
Well, those discussions actually started in 2004 in Seattle, and the legacy was the same discussions that have been taking place since 2004, and specifically the discussions related to keeping the icograda abbreviation because it has legacy. We're 2 years away from being 50 years old, and in the same instance, for instance, just like Omar has been saying, the AIGA went through exactly the same process, where AIGA, the actual acronym or abbreviation, doesn't mean anything anymore today, but there's brand value, there's currency in the actual name itself. So, but it was a very complicated process of even changing the descriptor from graphic design to communication design, because a lot of the stuff, and there's also the argument against including the word visual, because a lot of what we do is sensory, it's either sound, smell, or touch, which has nothing to do with visual whatsoever. And this has been anticipated that it would be a gradual process of development, first changing the descriptor, then changing the name, and ultimately maybe changing the actual abbreviation or acronym. And that was from the surveys that we did at that stage and the workshops, and ultimately it was that the majority agreed to the change of the descriptor with the vision of actually changing the actual name as well. But the discussion about changing the abbreviation or acronym, that hasn't been part of the discussions, because everyone just thought that it was a bad idea, because you don't just give up 50 years of legacy as currency.
Thank you, Jacques. Are there any other comments? Rob Peters?
Am I allowed to comment as an observer? So I think we've had an excellent expression of the range of sentiments and thoughts around this afternoon. I can tell you, having been on the icograda board beginning 12 years ago, that this was a conversation that we've had for that long, at least. I guess I just want to say that I really appreciate that this board is not proposing to change the name icograda or icograda, because I think that has a lot of legacy around the world, more so in smaller countries that have had a relationship with icograda for a long time, and maybe less so with sort of the larger, more powerful developed nations. But I would very much encourage you to keep the name icograda. As to what the other name is, I know it seems really important and people get passionate about this, but I would say vote on it. let the council decide. You are the council, you are the members. And you've had very intelligent recommendations from the board. Vote on it and go with what the majority decides. And the good news is, no bad solution. Any one of the three that were proposed today is going to work just great. And we can move on with it. We know who we are. Thanks.
Thank you, Rob. We're definitely going to take a vote because we do have a motion on the table. I just want to see if the discussion is resolved. Do we have any more comments?
Yes, we have a
Zelda?
comment here. I just wondered if there had been any consideration given to the fact that, especially with regards to the notion of icograda being married to the longer description, has there been any consideration of the fact that we have increasingly people who do not use Roman characters and who do not speak English? And therefore, icograda is more of a sound, a brand to them, and the need to marry it, to match it up with the individual words may not be as necessary or as pertinent.
I would just like to add to that comment because a lot of people I meet are surprised when they actually discover it is an acronym. I don't know if there's anyone who supports it out there, but I've met many people that thought it was a name that didn't understand the connection anyway, so I think Zelda makes a good point.
Any more comments? Questions? Mervyn?
Yeah, I just wondered whether you need a descriptor. I mean, the name's icograda. Why bother to explain it? If someone asks, yeah, we're the Council of Communication Designer or whatever you want to say about it. So, and you say you've got leading creativity. So, icograda, leading creatively, and let it be done.
We did consider that one actually. We did consider that one at one stage. For Indonesia.
I think personally it's simply based on where do we want to go. We want to cater more just a graphic design or more than that into more than only a visual. It can be a sound, or it can be a smell, a sensory branding, or it can be a language, like in the movie Avatar. So it's just based on where we want to go. Then we choose what is the relevant solutions. It's going to be a communication design, or it's going to be graphic design. As simply as that. And we are who we are, and we have the same objective to strengthen the design industry. I have no problem about the name itself, about is it going to be a descriptor or is it going to be an acronym. It's just the relevance of the objective in the future, who we want to cater. Is it just graphic or more than that? Thank you.
Thank you, Gabby.
Hi, I agree with Mervyn's thoughts about icograda leading creatively, because I think that's going to take away, that's definitely going to take away the stigma that's attached to the communication part of it, in terms of what that gentleman was saying earlier on, being a telephony type company. We also got to think about the different languages around the world that has been brought up here, and I think something like icograda leading creatively does feel a lot more modern, and it does kind of take on a new kind of meaning going forward. I think it's a hugely, compared to the kind of murkiness of the Council of Communication Design. It does resonate with me. And I'll go with Mervyn's point. I really think that's very strong. Thank you.
Well, I don't know how many hundreds of times I've had to explain the name icograda. And I think if you have a name that doesn't mean anything, really, to new people, you have to have a line of explanation. So whichever way you want to explain it, but I think you need an explanation about what this council is about, one way or another. So whether you call it international communication and graphic design or whatever, but I think an explanation is necessary if you want to have a name that doesn't mean anything really. It doesn't, icograda doesn't mean anything. It means a lot for us who know it, but for new people who come on board, what does it mean?
Thank you, Karen. Mervyn?
I disagree with my wife. No, look, you know, if you take words like IBM, you know, they used to have to describe that they were the international business machine company, and you know, now we know who IBM is. So the way to explain who we are is a communications problem. And if you communicate all our activities and what we do, you don't need to have an official fixed descriptor. You can describe it. I think that's fine. If somebody says, well, who are you? Well, we're the council. We represent all the associations. That's fine. You know, and the associations operate in a wide range of communication, graphic, sound, feeling, whatever. So it seems to me you could have a variety of descriptions.
Isn't it pretty much of a stretch to compare IBM with icograda? I mean, we're talking about billions of investments in branding.
Well, it's early days, you know.
An NGO with very much less global recognition.
I agree with both of you. And since Marvin's idea is brilliant because then we have icograda, for example, meaning creatively. But that's what I said before is we always should take care of to whom we are communicate. And I tell you again, if you communicate to politicians, they have to know what you are, because otherwise they will not listen. Because if you say the Council of Flowers or Breeding, or I don't know, and we have to say, no, we are the Council of Associations. So they know we have something democratic behind us. So it's good that we can change this explanation every time it depends on to whom we communicate. But our name is icograda, leading creative.
Well, leading creatively is the mantra of icograda, that there is no discussion about us abandoning it. It's just something that complements the name of the council. So, Wanda?
Yes, what we decide here, I will bring home in our organization, we call it visual communication, and that includes both graphic designers, illustrators, animation designers, interactive designers, and also cartoonists. And the illustrators, they have problems to identify themselves with the designers, really. And what we decided here, I'll bring home. And we still are not lawyers, dentists, architects. It's difficult to explain to others who we are. And it's even difficult to explain what graphic designer or visual communicators are. I think communication design is a good word. Have you considered visual communication as possibility as well? Anyway, communication design is good. I think we have to explain it. Icograda is just for us, as designers always are doing things for themselves. We are like scratching each other's backs. I think we have to be clear to others who we are.
Lawrence?
I've been listening to the discussion and thinking about the audience. And we've heard about the audience being politicians, we've heard about the audience being our peers, members of associations. I stand up in front of many people a number of times each year, And I talk about communication design and I talk about graphic design. I talk about communication design to incoming students of the communication design courses that I'm responsible for. But I have to use the words graphic design to include their parents, who often will turn up at open days. So we have to understand that not only do we have a number of different different audiences, but within those audiences we span generations. And I think if I were 25 years older than I am, I would have a strong affiliation and connection to the term graphic design, and I would feel uncomfortable about losing it. So I can completely understand as a terminology. It has a history. I don't think any of us are questioning the idea of changing the name icograda. I think we have some uncomfortable issues around what it might stand for and how we present that to people. Even as an abbreviation, as a set of letters that identify us as the International Council, some people don't quite understand that. So I think we have to think carefully about the audience. If we are truly communication designers, we need to be sure that we're communicating clearly, articulately and efficiently, and remember all of those audiences.
Okay, so since we cannot have a vote with several options, we can either take a vote on motion as it is, or we can have somebody, if you wish, to propose an amendment to the motion. So for the sake of clarity, Robert, I was not really sure that you were proposing that amendment or just commenting. Just a comment. John?
Actually, when I first joined icograda, I actually helped to format some of the communication policies, and looking at what's happening today, I think I failed. But I think we're confusing the issues because it's not a matter of choice. We're not selecting between leading creatively or icograda Council of Communication Design. So it's more about selecting the legal name. And if we look at a business card, all three dynamics will be displayed in the business card. It will have icograda, it will have the leading creatively, and this will be the legal name, International Council of Communication Design. So I think we should not confuse the two issues. It's not a matter of selecting leading creatively or the International Council of Communication Design.
That's a very good point, Tom. Okay, if there are no other comments, then I will call the professional members to a vote. The motion is on the table. So can we please have a show of your red cards? All in favor?
Sorry, can you just repeat that, please?
Sorry?
Can you repeat that, please?
Yes, so I think I will need the scrutineers to come up front. So everybody who is in favor of this motion and who is a professional member, so has a red card, can you please hold up your red card if you agree with the motion? And can I have please the scrutineers come to vote? And I have 3 proxies with a mandate to vote as the board recommended. So in total that is 21, which is a majority of over 2/3 of the professional members, so the resolution is passed. Can I just please to state for the record if there were abstentions to this vote? 2. And anyone against? 1. Okay, thank you. Moving on, we have several other revisions, and the next ones have to do with the membership categories. So what, can you go on? Okay, so we have 2 amendments to the description of members, and then we have 1 new membership category that we would like to propose. So first is the amendment to the description of professional members. So you can see here in red what has been changed. So our description so far read that it's membership-based organizations having national status, the majority of whose members are professional communication designers or who belong to other areas of art and design, and whose objects are to influence and raise standards of communication design may be admitted as professional members. What we propose here is to add to this description the majority of whose members are individuals or groups of professional communication designers, which means that if it's a professional organization, which is actually a network of several entities, that it can also be admitted as a professional member if their mandate is in alignment. So I would like to propose this motion. Is there anybody who would like to move it? Thank you. We have mover Michael. And is there a second? Jim? Is there any discussion or questions? Rob?
You will want to make sure that you reflect the language of the last motion in the proposed description in that case. Because here you refer to communication designers, so this anticipates, I guess, the change that has been made.
Well, actually, the wording professional communication designers has been before. The only thing that
had been previously approved. Okay.
Well, it was, you can see
no
the before and after, so it was actually in the before.
Thank you.
That part has not been changed. Robert?
Can you give us an example? Can you give us an example what does this means?
Yeah, one of the applications that came to the executive board to consider this year was Ave Design in Brazil. They are a professional association, but their members are groups of corporations. The second example was in Denmark, where the association who represents professional practice, professional standards, their members are businesses. So, but they're not they weren't applying to become a corporate member in the sense of representing business practice. They very much saw themselves as a professional member upholding the same professional practice values and policy values that we would represent within that category.
It means that salesmen who sell corporate communication design, they are members then because they are in a group.
It's actually whose members or individuals are individuals or groups of professional communication designers. So it cannot be car salesmen. It's still professional communication designers.
But these are all companies. And these not have to be designers. They can be everybody. So in this way, this is a door for everybody to come in.
I understand your concern, and I think that was the kind of conversation we were having. But these are companies or associations of designers. So if you read the language, what we're saying is the association would be made up of individual designers or corporations and groups of designers. So it might be an association of associations.
Beta in Europe, right?
Exactly. Beta would be a fantastic example of that.
Jim?
Something like APDF. Association of Professional Design Companies. APDF. Design firms.
Sorry, I did not hear the whole question.
Another example would be APDF, Association of Professional Design Firms.
Yes. Do we have any other questions or comments? Then can I please have a show of hands All in favor? It's the red card again. Please hold up your hands while the scrutineers count your votes. So, can we please, thank you, can we please have a show of hands if there are any abstentions? Either or abstentions? None? One abstention? Can I please see a show of hands for against? You cannot abstain and vote against, so is it abstention or against? Abstention, okay. Is there anyone against? Okay, so the bylaw was amended with the majority of the professional votes. Thank you. Okay, the next one we have is an amendment to the current institutional members category to add education networks. The reason icograda Executive Board is proposing this amendment to our institutional category is to allow networks of design education institutions to qualify as members. At the 2011 board meeting in Argentina, we discussed this threat to education institutions forming their own networks, and we agreed that these networks could qualify for institutional membership. So I would like to propose this motion, and is there anybody who would like to move it? No? Rebecca? Is there anybody who would like to second the motion? Yes, Peter, thank you. Are there any question or discussion? I'm a little bit concerned by the silence. I'm going to just make sure that we all understand what this amendment means.
Just to reassure you and everybody that we know what you're talking about. Again, could you give an example? There are two examples that would fit here. For instance, icograda has an association with Cumulus as a design education network. Their members are individual schools. In this context, if Cumulus wanted to approach icograda to become a member, they would fit in this category. Similarly, in Brazil and in Argentina, both there are networks of the credentialed schools who form their own association. They approached us not to become an association member, but wanted to be within the education category as an association.
Are there any more questions, observations, discussion? No? If not, then I would invite the scrutineers back up here, and I would like to ask for the show of red cards in favor of this motion.
Please, do you have a red card? No, I don't have. Okay, so you won't be voting in this category. All right, so.
so the motion is passed with a majority of professional votes. Can I please have a show of hands for abstentions? None? Anyone against? Okay. Thank you. Motion passed. And then we have... And then finally we have a new membership category that this board would like to propose, and this is cities. So I'm giving the floor over to Russell.
Thank you. We're quite excited about this category, and it's come out of experience over a number of years where we've had design wings. We're starting now to engage at a very much a political level with these cities, and we see a huge opportunity where cities around the world are claiming or are proud to say that they claim that they've got design strategies and call themselves design cities. So we see an opportunity here to create another layer of network at that level of design advocacy or that we've been discussing. Now, we already have a design promotion category where in some cities they do have, like Hong Kong and Singapore, they have design centres and design policies. This is more at the mayoral level, and we feel that there would be a great opportunity, and we're looking for examples of probably the closest thing that exists at the moment, which we already have engagement, is the UNESCO Creative Cities Program. This is not is different. It's much different than that. It's basically any city who wants to claim that they are a design city and would like to network with other cities around the world, they join this network, and we provide that facility for them to connect. So it's really based on our network system that already exists.
Okay, so I would like... Oh, Rob.
I wonder if someone from the board could just speak to how you will evaluate whether or not an applicant city has an established design policy and or design development programming, and how you will determine whether or not they do demonstrate a commitment to raising the standards of professional design practice and demonstrate a commitment to international exchange. My concern would be that this is a very broadly stated admission process, and I'm just wondering if you have specific criteria or processes in place to actually be able to substantiate applications such as this. How will that take place?
Okay, well, the first step was to actually get agreement that this is a good idea. The second thing is we have to establish fees, and obviously there's different fee structures for different countries, different cities around the world, and we would base that roughly on our fee structure systems that we already have in place. As far as proof or evidence that they are dedicated and to design, we would be asking a series of questions, and then we would evaluate that at board level. Now, how we investigate that, I guess, is yet to be determined. Julia's got some things to add to this.
Okay, this will be actually an agenda for the next elected board. But what we have in mind at the moment is UNESCO, which has set up a system called the UNESCO Creative Cities Network. And it's very much a little bit like the World Heritage system, where with the World Heritage system they designate a particular city or site, based on a set of criteria. So they set up a very simple system called UNESCO Creative Cities. And there's 7 criteria, specific criteria. And where, when a city applied to become a UNESCO Creative City, they would evaluate this applicant city based on these 7 criteria. And it's very specific. We would like to align our evaluation along with the UNESCO Creative Cities in terms of, actually the UNESCO Creative Cities have 7 categories, including multimedia, film, literature, gastronomy, music, design, and craft. And we would like to align ours with design. And actually, icograda is a partner with the UNESCO Green Cities Network. We are on the judging panel for their applicants to approve the application. So there's already that partnership. But the reason we are also establishing these categories very often considering the political situation, there are certain cities in the world that will not be able to qualify to become the UNESCO's Green Cities Network. Taipei would be one example. And I think icograda, one of these is we could go beyond, transcend the political boundaries. And another reason for having this category is we really need to reach out to those cities where there are no design professional associations or even no design schools yet. But we can approach their government to invest in design. And maybe if we bring in these already design cities with very established policies and very good advantage, we would like to have mentorship. These well-established design cities could work with developing cities where there's no association, professional design associations, no schools, no design programs yet. This is another long-term perspective.
I'd like to add that this is not only a potential design designation, but in my experience, for example, when we had the Design Week in Daegu, it was all sponsored by the city of Daegu. And I think this creates an opportunity that for cities that does have a design agenda, it could enable local associations to actually use that collaboration with the city to actually establish design events. And I think this is also happening a lot in mainland China as well.
The other thing is the criteria that we establish. It's not a one criteria fits all. There are different definitions of design in different countries and different expectations from design. So we have to respect that as well. So we have to, once we establish those criteria, we have to accommodate those concerns.
Any other questions or comments?
Just 1 second, I just want to check.
I just wanted to verify in the articles of incorporation and bylaws whether the actual criteria specified for the other membership categories, the evaluation criteria, which is not, because there might have been a concern, this is a great idea, but according to what criteria are you going to select, and the bylaws actually and the articles don't specify those criteria. So there's no reason why this can't go to a vote, and then ask the incoming board to actually define those criteria very clearly before. And I do believe that before new members, if this gets ratified, before new members get accepted, that the criteria actually be distributed to all the members, so that it's very clear what the mandate is, and that the playing field is completely fair.
Thank you to our parliamentarian, Wanda, and Jim, and Andre. Do you have your hand up also? Okay.
Hello. Could we work on it as a project so that we can work on it until next gathering? Is that possible? Do you understand what I mean?
You want to work on this project? You're suggesting that we vote on it now and then work out the criteria as a project, or are you suggesting we postpone this and work on a project and then vote on it in Turkey?
Yeah, so,
Could you speak to why it's limited to cities of 1 million inhabitants? Because that would eliminate the majority of the cities in Canada, for example.
Yeah, good point, but we did discuss this, and we did want to focus on the major capitals that are the employers and the main drivers of industry. I know it's in Australia, I'm just thinking, for example, you could have a number of cities within one region that actually do qualify. We just wanted to have some sort of, I guess, scale associated with the membership.
Yes, I have the same concerns. Sorry that I always talk to every topic. But in this case, it's very serious because the most hotspots in Germany couldn't be member because the hotspots are very small cities. And the UNESCO chose Berlin, for example. And we are all wondering about this because designers don't earn money in Berlin. We are everywhere in Germany. The idea to take only big cities, it's great for advertisement and so, but it's not the reality in our countries.
Okay, thank you. Can we just take a moment to revise the protocol here, because actually you went into discussion because before we actually managed to put the motion, to propose the motion. So in fact, we would need a mover and a seconder for this in order to be a motion, and then to be able to enable discussion. And then you would be free to also propose amendments to the motion. So does anybody want to move this motion? It's a procedural question that we have to address. Peter, thank you. Is there a second? Good, minus, thank you. So, and now, yes, so now the discussion is actually open, and if you wish to propose an amendment to the motion, you're free to do so as well.
So in Europe, we talk about regions. So if you say that it could be possible that there is also cities and creative regions, we talk about creative regions, that would be good. That would also help Canada.
Do the regions have governance? Do they have their municipalities?
It would be a capital of a region, for instance, in this case. Any other questions or comments? Helmut?
To me, I'm just in 10 or 15 minutes. To me, it sounds that you are start watering the professionalism of the organization. You open it to big cities, and later you open it to smaller cities, and more unprofessional members are able to come to join icograda as a professional organization.
Thanks, Helen. I think earlier today we spoke in our reports to where we're heading, and we've spent the last term positioning ourselves as an organisation that not only does network amongst their members, but we actually represent design at an advocacy level, and we spoke about how we're having dialogue with those decision makers around the world, and some of those include at the political level, NGO level, and of course the CEO level. So this is an opportunity for actually to get the design thinking, debate and discussion operating at a city's level. So we've shifted our positioning of what we actually do. Yes, we are a network of professional associations, but we're much more than that now. We've got promotional members, with education members. Now we're trying to get that dialogue going at a much higher level. So that's the motivation behind this. Karen?
Just two questions. One is, what rights does the city member have in icograda? That's one thing. And they get voted on the board or things like that. That's one thing. The other thing is, if that city member turns out not to follow a design policy after having announced they do, have you got any way of then excluding them?
Sorry, Karen, just hang on to that mic because I didn't hear the second part of the question. Sorry.
If a city member, after having announced that they will create a design policy and they'll promote design, then in a couple of years' time turn out not to do that, that it's only words and no action? Have you got any ways to exclude that member?
Yeah, there would be an annual fee, but that would be their decision, though. The question I think Karen's asking is whether if they do pay their fee, they're still not backing up what they've promised. They no longer follow. Okay. Well, if they're no longer satisfying our criteria, we would vote at the board level that would be excluded. The first part of the question was whether they could be a voting member and a member of the board. I would suggest they would be. Right to that?
So yes, they would be a voting member, but they would not be a professional member, so they would not be able to vote on professional matters and on personal practice matters and on bylaw changes. But yes, they could be elected to the board. Wanda?
Excuse me, I think it's a good idea, but I would also ask why not business members?
We do have corporate members.
Yeah, in the same rules or the same, yes. So with the same background thinking.
Yes, we do have a corporate category in icograda. We had it for several, or
yeah, but
how many years now?
I think
that.
Yes, at the same with the same background as this. Yes.
Similar, yes.
Yeah, similar.
And they're also general members, they're also not professional members, so also they do not get to vote on matters of professional practice.
Okay, thank you.
Andre?
What is the goal of this proposal?
I think I just tried to explain it before, that we're trying to get dialogue with a different level of the audience. We're trying to have dialogue with decision makers in a similar vein that design promotion agencies have. They're actually a conduit between the profession, that's helmets and government. And so as we evolve as an organisation, we're evolving. We started out very much as a collection of designers around the world who were exchanging ideas and so on. And then the network aspect of icograda is less relevant now because there's a million ways to network. We've got Facebook, there's also, there's networking going on that doesn't need icograda, So, and also we have to position ourselves differently than what the organisations do on the ground. We're not just another version of what you are. And I think, we've been doing this for quite some time. I know it goes back to Mervin's time, when we were proposing the World Design Survey and so on. There's a different role for icograda now than there was once, and there's a different dialogue and a different discussion, and this all helps the profession. It all helps the profession, but we believe this is where we're shifting and we're moving. So that's the motivation.
I would also like to add that the issue that things are changing. Exit, our sister organisation, has been engaging with cities very closely and very successfully. That's why there's already 3 World Design Capital cities. It is exactly what Russell was saying, engaging at a very high level. So it's critical. And in terms of ensuring the collaboration within the IDA, there should also be some closer connectivity in terms of what the different partners in the IDA is doing. It is a logical step forward. And obviously, the other additional thing is there is a potential financial benefit for the organisation as well, because we're not just dependent on corporate sponsors. For instance, one of the main investors in this specific event is the city of Taipei, and we are excluding them in totality being part of the engagement and the discourse.
Robert, just before Robert gets the microphone, thanks, Jacques. I'm hearing there was a question regarding the size of the cities. Am I hearing that there may be a suggestion for an amendment to this to include smaller cities, or do we want to keep it at the scale that we've suggested? I'd like to hear some feedback on that too. Rob?
The question, what it is for, that was very right, because Exit is doing this, okay, but do we have to do it as well? The other thing is, to say it's 1 million, that means we need big partners there. What we are really doing is we bring them all into our microcosmos. I don't know if this is the right thinking. We have to go out and to communicate and interact with the others. We have to bring them all into our cosmos. And it's a way of thinking. What I want to say with the creative regions is that the thinking in Europe is in regions. That means money goes into regions. They interact now. So we have to take this in mind, because the big cities in Europe are not all design cities. They are maybe big cities, but design is everywhere in Europe.
Okay. I hear what you're saying. But in regards to the World Design Capital, this is not an alternative to the World Design Capital. The World Design Capital has Turin and Seoul, Helsinki, and now Cape Town, 4 in their network of cities. This is a different dialogue. This is not about putting the focus on the city for a 12-month period. This is a much different dialogue that's occurring, and it also feeds into our other activities like our World Design Survey. The more contacts we make at that governmental level, the more it helps us with our World Design project and others. So it's a totally different project. I wouldn't like to confuse it at all with the World Design Capital. Your point about the regions, I think if there's a government base to that region or a municipality to that region, I think we could probably do business with them. But if it's just a region by definition only, it's a little hard to get that dialogue going. Unless you want to add to that.
Okay, Jim and then Rebecca.
Did I understand that a city member could be a board member? So then presumably down the road we could have an icograda board that's made up of mayors around the world and no designers?
Well, it could be the mayor, or it could be the design director of that city, or the minister responsible for design, or the government department official that's responsible for design. So I don't have a problem with that. We have a design promotion person on the board at the moment, and we have design educators, and we have design practitioners. I think we're a broad church, and I think we should encourage that. And you could get a board of mayors, but that'll be the decision of you guys out there. If you want that, you'll get it. I think you want that.
Rebecca?
I just wanted to say that we're seeing increasing municipalities and governmental agencies using crowdsourcing as a way of purchasing design services, and I think having city members, in fact, could promote best practices for designers. But I do worry that having city members be able to sit on the board could politicize the icograda board in ways that we're not anticipating.
That's a good point, but all board members realise that this is a non-partisan organisation, so they have to pledge to that. We don't represent our country or our organisation we come from. We represent design internationally, and we've got to be all conscious of that when we're board members. You would hope that someone in that situation would do that. If they didn't act that way, it would be up to the board to either discipline them or make sure that doesn't happen. But that danger's always around with anyone, you know. Karen?
I think that if you want to go that route, because the world is going that route, I think you may have to rethink how the board is made up, so that you ensure that you can't, because if the choice was between the mayor of Taipei and me, we've got a different amount of money and weight, it's very likely that you would choose the mayor of Taipei, I think. So therefore I think it would be important if you could say, well, so many board members must be made up of associations, and so many of educational organizations, so many of possible city members. So I think you may have to redesign the way the board is made up.
We might find that's the case down the track, but I have a lot of faith in the assembly we have here today that wouldn't occur, because I think, if you're concerned, there'll be a lot of people concerned that would occur as well, and the democratic process that we have wouldn't allow it. So, but if it did, we felt it was a problem, then we may have to look at changing it. Sorry, no, that was just before.
That's all very good, Russell, but if your membership is dominated by cities, then you wouldn't stand a chance, you see. So it wouldn't be it would be democratic, but it would be outweighed by the city members. So there is that danger. And so I think what Karen's saying is absolutely right. You could simply put into the bylaws that the board has to be constituted of a certain number of people. I think that's a safety measure that you would consider.
Yes, ma'am. And Robert was before you, and then you can speak.
As I said, when I stand up, I grew up in a town hall. Yeah, I cannot get in my head how you will do this, because if you understand, there are only two connections. It's the promotion part, the promotion for the city you can have contact to, or the other is the university in the city. A Lord Mayor can not have contact to you, because it is you need a body for this. So I don't understand how you will do it.
If the city doesn't have a body for it or a representative for it, they don't join. Simple as that.
They have a promotion body for this. In this case, we have everything for that. If they have a university, we have everything. We don't need a new membership category. We have everything to connect these cities. What I feel is it's just for advertising. I don't know if it's the right way. I would suggest what Wanda said is that we should work on this, because I think something's wrong with this idea. So.
Yeah, well, I think the comments are all valid, and if there's any more comments, we'll listen to them. But I think the point now is whether we put it to a vote. I see Monica's got a microphone there.
Mine is just a little suggestion. When it comes to deciding the sizes of the cities, just a request that you consider cities that don't have that many people, because, for example, I'm thinking how a country like Botswana could benefit from a membership, and the country's got less than 1.8 million people, you know.
Okay, so Monica, are you proposing an amendment to the motion?
It doesn't have to be an amendment to the motion, but maybe when you start.
No, but actually the motion is on the table, so if you want to amend it, yes.
Yes, please. And maybe it's something that can be discussed as part of the bylaws, maybe, I don't know. But yes,
okay, so metropolitan and regional authority, and then we would remove of more than 1 million inhabitants. Would that work? Is that the amendment that you're proposing, to remove this part of the sentence? Because I see many hands popping up, so maybe just to be practical in terms of time, can we just maybe take a vote on the motion and see if we can make it work or not? Okay, can I please have the scrutineers up here? And I would like to ask you for a show of hands of everybody in favor of the motion to accept cities as membership category. Is there anyone in favor? 1, 2. Okay, so it's pretty clear. The resolution was not passed.
I was wondering if I think this is a great idea and has potential, but I hear there's a few fears, very reasonable fears in the room. One was the size, one was the voting, and will the board be controlled? I'm wondering if perhaps another motion would be put forward to try it, but with an amendment that there would be, at least for now, no voting rights for this membership category, and perhaps with a lower threshold of 500,000. Perhaps that would pass.
Well,
we have a lot of thought into it, so maybe we could just see that.
Tried to amend the motion to remove the threshold of the number of inhabitants, and it did not pass. and I think that we really need to be moving along with the agenda. Okay.
People understand we already have a promotional member category which has the potential to be politicised as well, and that hasn't occurred.
So we could possibly consider Vanna's suggestion that we make this something to think some more about over this term and not completely discard it, but perhaps to study it with a few, maybe a small committee, and then maybe it'll come up again next time.
Well, I think that the new board will be able to have the opportunity to refine this proposal, and then maybe in 2 years' time, for the next year, we might have another one.
Well, I think that, as Karen says, we have to organize that, well, that proposal in a strict frame, I think, with resolution, motion, well, and control system, I suppose.
Okay.
Sure.
So maybe it might be something that a little task force also consisting
Yes,
of our
probably.
members can be formed around.
Sure.
Okay. Great. Moving along. The next motion that we're proposing is to revise the bylaw number 63D, which has to do with conditions of board membership. Can we have the slide, please? Okay, so the proposal here is to change the criteria to do the wording that all board members need to attend at least they cannot miss more than 2 consecutive meetings or 75% of all scheduled meetings without being required to step down if that motion is supported by a majority of the board members. Actually, this is already an amendment to the motion that we have put forward in advance of the meeting, because that motion said 6 elected members of the board. And since our deliberation at our board meeting in Montreal, we said that we would like to treat the co-opted board members the same as the board members who were elected. So in that sense, we are proposing that it's the majority of the board members and not just the majority of 6 elected. But the main reason why we are proposing this is because functions on the board are not honorary. They are a lot of work, and we want to make sure that we have full engagement of the board members, so we think that this makes it more clear. It's just making it more strict, in essence, than it was before. So it's 2 instead of 3 board meetings, or 75% of all scheduled meetings. Well, no, actually, we would first have to have a motion and a second in order to be able to open the discussion. Robert? Okay, would anybody like to move the motion? No? Rebecca? Is there somebody who would like to second the motion? Robert? Okay, so open floor for discussion. Comments? Rob?
Just from experience, I would suggest that this is a very wise motion that is proposed, and it has to do with the proper functioning of the board, and I would very much support the board in making this motion. It's about efficacy, so it's an excellent motion, I would say.
Any other comments? No? Then I propose that we take a vote. So it's again a professional vote. Red cards. All in favor, please put your hands up. Okay, so we do not need the scrutineers to vote here because it's pretty obvious that we have over 2/3. So I'm declaring this motion passed with the majority. I would just like for the record to state that there are abstentions. Abstentions? Against? No one? Thank you. And then the final one, and then we're going to have a break, I promise, is in regards to the number of the co-opted board members. This is the bylaw number 53. So This motion proposes that we allow the executive board to co-opt up to 6 further members, subject to agreement of no fewer than 6 members elected at the General Assembly or serving as immediate past president. Currently, we allow 4 board members to be co-opted, so the board is proposing that we now make it 6. Would anybody like to move the motion? Get a minus. And is there a second? Thank you. We have a second from Hong Kong, so can we please discuss? Questions, comments? Jim?
Could you speak to why you feel you need 2 more co-op members?
There's several reasons. First one is that we need to open our doors to young designers and students to let them have a voice. And because of the way our association works at the moment, it's very difficult for them to reflect their voice on the board, to be a member of the board. I thought it would be a very good idea to have a very passionate, devoted. The number. The reason we need to have more members than what is needed is, first of all, I think we do need to have a support group for the current board members. These will be people supporting elected board members. That's one reason. Another would be we need to, for very practical reasons, last term we had several elected board members who had to resign due to family issues and due to business issues, health issues, which made it very difficult to have a full board to continue this task. And so this is a buffer to, especially when you consider the economic downturn, that you never know what's going to happen. And people, when they are elected, they have the best of intentions. And when we say no more than 6, we're not saying that it's up to 6 or we're going to co-opt 6 people. It's just to give the option. But there's several good reasons to co-op a young designer, to co-op people who are not part of our network, who are not members, so that we can bring in the outside expertise to support the board. These are all the reasons to strengthen and to have a full board that could move forward.
I'd also like to add that it also is to ensure we have diversity in terms of geographical representation, and also sort of because our profession is changing so rapidly, also to ensure a specialization of different portfolios.
Are there any more questions or comments? No? Jim?
Is there a cost ramification in terms of running icograda? The added expense of flights and hotel rooms and issues like that? Maybe David can speak to that as treasurer.
It would have a reflection on the General Assemblies and on design weeks, but as you know, we do fund our own travel, so it's up to each board member individually. It's only at certain times, like at the General Assembly, that a portion or could be covered, so it would have a reflection on that. I can have David elaborate further.
Yes.
yes, it would have an effect. There's sometimes other people absorb the costs of additional participants. Sometimes it's ourselves, sometimes it's some kind organization, but there are also very commonly, the more board members we have, the more expenses we have, there's no question.
I just made the point that it's up to 6. It's not that mandatory that there will be 6 co-opted, but there might be 2 required to be co-opted, and you might find another 2 drop out for personal reasons. So the purpose of that number is not that it would be 6, that it could be 6, depending on circumstances.
If you look at specific extra costs, maybe for example, if the meals are taken care of, it will be 2 extra persons for meals, drinks, 2 extra desks, chairs. But in terms of traveling and accommodation, because we cover all traveling and accommodation costs, that wouldn't be extra for the icograda secretary or for our budget. At the moment, for elected board members, in terms of attending the General Assembly, the hosting city or the hosting country will cover the accommodation. And what we would like to propose is for the 4 co-opted board members, their costs will not be covered by the host city.
Lawrence?
Speaking as a co-opted member, I think the ambitions of icograda and the ambitions of the board is very important with the scale of projects, and we've seen some of those projects presented to us earlier on today. I think if we want to continue with the scale of projects, with the engagement and involvement of the board, it's very important that co-opted members are brought in to support those projects and to support board members. I spoke a couple of days ago about the need for there to be some kind of system in place for new members, new co-opted members of the board, to have mentors on the board. And I think that's something that the new board can talk about further. But the scale of some of the projects that we're delivering will mean that it's critical that friends are brought in, colleagues are brought in, new ideas, new thinking, and can share some of that workload. So I speak as a co-opted board member.
We should also put on the plate that an eventual 2 extra co-opted members would not only mean some extra expenses as we just mentioned here now, but those could also be 2 more people to bring in sponsorships. So you should also consider that.
Any other comments? Okay, then I would like to call our professional members to vote again. So all in favor of this motion, please put up your red cards. Okay, it's over 2/3, so we don't need scrutineers to take a vote, and the motion is passed. Thank you. Can we just record if there are abstentions? For the record, can we have abstentions? 1. Can we have against? None. Okay, thank you. And well, their deserved break is in order, 15 minutes.